ha'ira de'im ruchi geviati Adonai liven lo ira de'im ruchi geviati Adonai liven lo ira My soul I give to you, my spirit in your care. Draw me near, I shall not fear, safely in your hands. Draw me near, I shall not fear, safely in your hands. My soul I give to you, my spirit in your care. Draw me near, I shall not fear, safely in your hands. Draw me near, I shall not fear, safely in your hands.
This gathering, this day, for me is more about birth than it is about death, and it's more about rebirth and renewal than it is about defeat and despair. Obviously, I've been thinking about Cheryl constantly for a very long time, as a matter of fact. And what I was thinking about was that I knew Sheryl Lewart before she was Sheryl Lewart. Because when I knew Sheryl Lewart, she was Sheryl. And she was the person I became friends with and connected with in the Reconstructionist movement, and she was the person that I pursued and enticed to leave Philadelphia and her home and her work and to come out here and join us in our California adventure at KI. And she said yes to our great delight. Well, Sherry Shulowitz said yes, and then by the time she got here, all of a sudden Sheryl Lewart showed up. Which was perfect for Cheryl, because that's what I meant when I said this is so much about rebirth, and that's what Cheryl has always been for me. Someone who could become reborn and reinvent herself and how she looked and how she acted and how she touched all of us in so many ways, so many different times during the course of the years that she was here with us, certainly in my life, as my teacher and my rabbi as well. So I couldn't be here without a tambourine, because this one came from Cheryl. We should have brought them all, and we could have handed them out to everybody, because I think she had that many. And so my really only words of introduction before we share some of Cheryl's own prayers and words that will be shared by her dearest friends and colleagues, is something that Sheryl taught me and then retaught me and then had to reteach me and reteach me and reteach me and reteach me for at least a dozen years, which was what I'm going to share with you. Breathe. Breathe. That's what Sheryl taught me. Not to hold it in like this, but to breathe, to exhale all of that tension and sorrow and worry and sadness and loss, and to breathe. The source of that neshama, the soul that is breath. That was Sheryl. So we share some of her words. First with Rabbi Karen Fox.
Cheryl's words. Death is always personal. We filter our pain through the memories of loss, felt and held in the recesses of our hearts and in the fiber of our beings. As tears beget tears and sighs, earth-shattering sighs, we make meaning of tragedy and loss in small and personal ways. Death is always personal. And the reality is personal. It is what we know to be real and true. Each of us has our own precious memories, the look of a loving smile, scent of a sweet perfume, the taste of shared pleasure, the feel of an all-enveloping hug, the sound of a well-remembered laugh. Death is always personal. Our personal losses do not isolate us. We share the miracle of being human, comforted by the shared companionship of those around us. When we open our hearts to our own personal memories, we're embraced by community, the community of all those who've suffered and lost. One shared sigh, one common cry, one rhythm of release. Communal yearnings link us to each other. Common dreams and connected longings recognize our shared humanity. We are one in our pain, in our grief, in our tender suffering. We take solace and support from the presence of others, the comfort and compassion of living in community, acknowledging that death is always personal. I'd like to speak of only one slice of Cheryl's life as my Chavruta, my study partner for 13 years. Sheryl Lewart invited me into a relationship like one found in our ancient tradition. Those rabbis of the Talmud spent time together, parsing the issue of the day, searching for its moral and religious truths, and through that, created a community of learning. When I was feeling depleted, 20 years into the rabbinate, when I felt isolated because of the confidentialities I keep, the political awareness I could not share, and the aloneness that one has being in the synagogue and not really being a member of the synagogue. My family and the natural world were the sources of strength, and in some ways my only sources of strength. Little seemed to fill me back up, but when Sheryl invited me into a partnership of study, we entered the Torah's world of shared words and journeys, support and love. We started an adventure, meeting on Tuesdays at Asakuma for sushi and Hasidic thought. We explored the 18th and 19th century biblical commentators, not only for what they said, but what it meant to us. We would ask, where do you experience this issue in Torah? Where is your relationship with this idea, with this friend, with this character, and with God? Where do you miss God's presence? And where do you experience God's embrace? Aspects of God broke through our Torah study and propelled us on a path of learning and sharing. Sheryl was a rabbi's rabbi. She guided and mentored me and many others. When Cheryl encouraged me to become a student in the Institute of Jewish Spirituality, that process opened me. I'd been a pretty cognitive thinker, straight ahead, linear. And through the years at the Institute, and with Cheryl at my side, my heart opened to acknowledge the spiritual world found in the seen and unseen, in the spoken word, and in silence. Cheryl was a student in the process of learning, but with me, she was also an older sister in the spiritual sense, imparting life lessons along the way. She encouraged me to kind of go out of the box of the proper daughter of German Jews and expand to a wider, more personal, more engaged woman and rabbi. Cheryl has helped me acknowledge losses and experienced hopes in my family and community. Now, you have to know that this friendship was not always serious. We shared wine and cheese, hot tubs, and facials, and she knew how to circle my first and second high holiday drafts with circles that said, "What?" We laughed and we cried with Judith and Tova. We supported each other when worrying about children and family and Jewish life and practice. Our husbands, Bob and Mickey, enjoy each other as well. And it is wonderful. We also debriefed the high holidays for 12 years at an incredible spa in the desert. We shared a path of a small circle of women who chose to be rabbis long before we knew what that meant. Sheryl has shared a part of my soul, and I share part of hers. A phrase is used at the High Holy Days, tzedakah tatzil mimavet, acts of kindness and justice save one from death. But Sheryl truly believed that chavruta tatzil mimavet, that chavruta, companionship found through study, saves one from death by deepening and transforming life. Torah and its companionship has brought strength and wisdom to Cheryl. Torah and its friendships allowed support through the pain of saying goodbye and I love you. Torah study and companionship will continue to let Cheryl's light sparkle even long past her days here on earth. Cheryl, Chavruta tatzil mimavet. I'll continue to study with you at my side, with your wisdom, your insight, your compassion. I'll continue to talk with you, to teach of you and share our path of learning, living, and loving. May God continue to embrace you on your way. May God hover over your loving husband, Bob, and your children, Judy and Mark, their families and children. May God comfort them and your mother, your sister and brother, and their families and children. Zichrona livracha. May her memory always be for blessing.
Amen.
Amen. Actually, Cheryl was my personal mystic. I don't care what the rest of you say. She was my personal mystic. And she introduced me to all kinds of interesting, mystical authors, writers, thoughts from all over the world. I think Sheryl was the one who first actually introduced me to Jalaluddin Rumi. Not particularly Jewish, but Sufi mystic. And I was thinking of that. One of Rumi's more famous sayings is, when you are dead, seek for your resting place not in the earth, but in the hearts of men. Cheryl never would have said that. Not even close, but she would have liked most of the thought. And we all know the rest. That was part of what she brought here to KI as well. That female, feminine presence, rabbinic and otherwise, that opened up so many of you and so many who are not here over the years to be able to have their rabbi, because I just didn't make it for them. And they were so grateful when I brought Sheryl. So I won either way, you see. I'm no dummy. And they loved her, and they loved having her, and she made life and Judaism so much more accessible for them. And someone they could open their hearts to and their souls to and study with and learn from and with and pray with. I was about to say sing with, but God help me. No one will ever say sing with when it comes to Sheryl. She sang in the heart. And this is why she married you, because you liked her voice. Nothing else really needs to be said about that. Her dearest friends are here, her dearest colleagues, her soulmates in so many ways beyond Bob, in a different kind, her two-bunch palms mates. And we're privileged to have you with us, all of you today. And Rabbi Toba August to share some words from Sheryl.
I echo the beautiful words said by Karen. I was invited into Cheryl's life as one of her chavruta partners. I was one of the last ones. I was her Wednesday morning partner. And almost 6 years of every Wednesday morning. I don't know what to do with that time anymore. But I just want to share one of her poems with you now. It's called All Souls Descend. And she based this poem on the teaching of Rabbi Menachem Mendel of Kutz. All souls descend a ladder from heaven down to our world, a different ladder for each soul. Once they have arrived, the ladder is removed. in time, they are commanded to ascend back to heaven. Some despair and do not even try to ascend because their ladder is gone. Others jump up and fall again and again until they too give up. But a few souls refuse to surrender, despite the apparent futility of leaping and crashing down to earth. We must do what we must do, no matter the impossibility of our task. They leap and plummet over and over to the ground until, in an act of mercy, God draws them up to heaven. And I think this really reflects the layering of Cheryl's understanding of life. And I believe it was with God's kiss that she too was taken from us and ascended up to heaven.
Amen. The poet Wordsworth once wrote, "A deep distress hath humanized my soul." And this is a deep distress. It's a deep distress for all of us at Kehillat Israel. Andrew Franklin and I were so privileged to share this pulpit with Sheryl for so many years. Our congregation was so privileged to have her unique spirit for so many years. Our community was so touched by so many beyond these walls and this community by her writings and her words and her blessings, and a deep distress has powerfully struck us all. And there'll be more words, but we all know that there will never be enough words. And we're going to share our thoughts about Sheryl, and we all know that it's really impossible to do it, to capture her, even if we all were to do it. But the tambourine is here, and the candles are here. We were going to have you all wear white. And champagne and chocolate later. But she had such a precious, very, very, very precious relationship with our Reconstructionist colleague up the road in Malibu, her dear, dear friend, Rabbi Judith Halevi. She cherished that relationship, and she was very, very proud that you were president of the Board of Rabbis. She thought that was very cool. Yet another Reconstructionist rabbi as the president of the Board of Rabbis. But this was a relationship that I know you're going to share your thoughts, and I know there's no way you're going to capture it, as eloquent as you are, how much you meant to her. But we're privileged to have you here, sharing with all of us.
So, you just heard it. I'm Rabbi up the road. That's what Sheryl called me. And she called me, or I called her. The rabbi down the road, week after week, month after month, year after year, as we studied together, played together, wrote our sermons together. She was my editor and really tough. We recovered from the high holidays, floating together in the pool, looking up at two bunch palms. And then we taught together, shopped together, and explored together what it meant to be a mature, spiritual, female rabbi in the 20th century in Los Angeles. From the moment Rabbi Sheryl Lewart arrived at Kehillat, Israel in 1998, we became friends. Over the next 14 years, we became chavrusa, deep study companions and partners, present for each other throughout all of life's twists and turns. Rabbi Lewart officiated at my wedding in January 2002. 10, almost 11 years later, I am co-officiating at her funeral. Tashma, come and see. We read in the Zohar, the 13th century Kabbalah text that tells of the journey of the companions who traveled the countryside of Israel, discussing the deepest mysteries. Adonai will guide you always. He will satisfy nafshecha, your soul, with tzachot. The Zohar quotes Isaiah. And what are tzachot? The Holy Zohar asks. Radiances, splendor, sparkle. The soul of the righteous, adorned with sparkle. Rabbi Lewart's sparkle gave her away every time. The Zohar is a long, complex allegory that is framed in the Torah portions. The above that I quoted is in the portion Vayechi, which tells of the death of the patriarch Jacob. Cheryl and I had been studying together for years, sometimes Hasidic texts from the Institute of Jewish Spirituality, sometimes mystical texts taught by our teacher in Jerusalem, Melila Helner. And sometimes we studied Zohar, and about a year ago, we were looking for a new Zohar portion to study. They take months and months. The study is so rich. And we chose this portion of Vayechi seemingly at random. As Cheryl's medical prognosis grew worse, we began to realize that we were studying this portion of the mysteries of death for a reason. The wisdom of the Zohar was to guide her soul, her nefesh, into the world to come. Each week, we opened to a new passage that described the separation of the nefesh, the animal soul, from the ruach, the spirit, and the neshama, the highest level of the soul, that is eternal as the soul goes toward death. Soon, we began to realize that what we were reading was to become her own eulogy. Not a word about that was spoken, but we both knew that these teachings would honor her when her nefesh and her neshama finally parted. Come see, says the Zohar, within the eye of a human being appears a vision of the world in all of its revolving colors. In the center of the eye, the pupil, a vision of the whole world appears. There dwells Shekhinah, beauty of all, vision of all. Rabbi Lewart's life was always dedicated to vision and beauty. During her years as a wife and a mother in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, Cheryl ran an antique business, planted gardens, painted, decorated, sewed to perfection. And in these last years, she created the Garden of Eden right here in Pacific Palisades, a perfect spiritual garden with burbling fountains and chamsas, hands of protection, peeking out from underneath the bushes. In these last months, she spent every moment that she could surrounded by the beauty that she had gathered, listening to the wind in the chimes, watching the sun sets through that narrow passageway in Shadow Mountain. She walked in beauty, surrounded by the radiant light of the Shekinah. She was clothed in beauty. I will admit we did a lot of shopping together. But it is the Zohar that describes her true garment, the cloak that she will wear as her soul ascends on high. Come and see, the Zohar declares. Come and see. Certain mitzvot fashion garments of glory below, and others fashion the cloak that the soul will wear in the world above. The Zohar then describes a radiant garment of light woven by the mitzvot performed in one's lifetime. And what are these mitzvot? According to the commentators, some are intellectual or emotional, such as inspiring love and awe of God. Others are verbal, such as leading prayer, guiding the study of Torah, reconciling people who are quarreling, bringing couples together under a chuppah in peace. Others are physical, visiting the sick, being present at births, standing at funerals. I invite you to close your eyes. Take a good breath. That's Sheryl saying that. Close your eyes and see and identify the mitzvot that you shared with Rabbi Lewart. Take a moment. Let them come into focus. Acknowledge them. And now let those images begin to dissolve and ascend in light, ribbons of light on high. Bless them, say thank you. Your acknowledgement of Rabbi Lewart's mitzvot is your blessing as you weave her cloak of light to wear in the world on high. No mitzvah should be forgotten. A sparkle here, a twinkle there. For surely, Rabbi Sheryl Lewart deserves a cloak of dazzling glory. Even in her illness, light poured through Cheryl's eyes. But over the last days, her neshama began to ascend, and her light on this plane grew dim. I began to think of her as Peter Pan's Tinkerbell, whose sparkle winks and blinks and finally fades. Please, Tink, we've all said from childhood. Please, Tink, don't go. But the time had come. We are so grateful to you, Cheryl, Rabbi, Grandma, Mom, wife, daughter, sister, lover, companion, teacher, friend, for every mitzvah, every smile, every teaching, every act of blessing. You have brought all of us closer to the Zohar's vision of divine beauty, shining through the pupil of your eye. Adonai will guide you always. He will satisfy your soul with tzachot, with radiances. May your soul be wrapped forever in a cloak of iridescent light, sparkling, radiant, glowing throughout all eternity. May you be blessed.
Let me sing for you who have never found your way home, and let me sing for you who have traveled this world all alone, and let my voice carry your name. Cross the river of memories, they're yours to reclaim. Let me sing for you who have buried your past under stone, and let me sing for your dreams that were broken so close to the bone, and let my voice carry your name. Cross the river of memory, they're yours to reclaim. Let this song find you wherever you are. Come through fire or water, by way of the heart. Oh, let us sing for you. Come awaken the crystalline dawn, and let us sing for you. Come alive with the strength to go on, and let our voices carry her name. Cross the river of memory, they're ours to reclaim. Let this song find us wherever we are. Come through fire or water, by way of the heart. Let this song find you wherever you are. Come through fire or water, by way of
Cantor Frankel and I were privileged to be the clergy of KI who helped design and build this sanctuary, but I always think of it as Sheryl's anyway. Because she took over the sanctuary and made it her own for so many years on the High Holy Days with Julie, whom she loved and adored. And the magic that they made together here in this sacred space became part of her sacred space that she then gave to all of us. Birth and rebirth, not death. It's what I said at the beginning. Because when I think of Sheryl and my experience of her in these years, what I think of is the incredible joy and privilege she had of finding her soulmate Bob, and my privilege in being able to marry them on Dee Dee and my anniversary so that we shared an anniversary. We snuck off down to Mexico, the four of us, and it's our 15th anniversary, and we consecrated our wedding vows, and then I married them. It was like a little incestuous sounding, doesn't it? It's a little kind of, but it was beautiful down in Las Rosas. Watching her children be married and have children, and the joy that she had in being a grandparent. Unbelievable. I was very jealous. Sheryl was the quintessential Skyper. She mastered that grandparent Skype experience like no one else. And how appropriate, how tragic, how heartbreaking, but how appropriate for her children and for Bob to ask if they could share some thoughts with us today. So, however you want to do that, whoever wants to do that, how you want to do it. Okay. Okay.
I am not as professional as these people, so I will need tissues. In fact, Karen took a little bit of, thank you, of a little bit of her beginning was my end. Death is always personal, so I'll be personal. For her 50th birthday party, her friends gave her champagne, chocolate, and a personal ad in the Jewish Exponent in Philadelphia. When I spoke to her on the phone after answering her ad, she told me she was a rabbi, she had just finished treatment for breast cancer, and she wanted to have fun. I told her I wouldn't hold it against her that she was a rabbi. We courted for 6 months until she came to KI in June '98. Then I courted her long distance with flowers every Shabbat. From Konstantinos. Konstantinos and I also had a long distance relationship. I asked her to marry me this time in 1998. I'll do it. Down on one knee, on a tree stump in front of Leslie, where are you? There you are. Leslie's house. We announced our engagement over a conference call that spread over Israel, Poland, the East Coast, and the West Coast. and included parents, children, and friends. We got married in Ensenada, as Steve just mentioned. Sherry giving them the vows, and Steve doing it reverse. It was just the start of the fun she wanted. And the relationship we both wanted. Okay. Did you ever notice that Sherry knew and used words in regular conversation that you did not understand nor had ever heard of? Well, one of those words for me was sui generis. It's a real word. Meaning unique. She was, and will always be sui generis. Huh. Okay. Life with her was never the same day to day. Never. There was never any rhythm that I got used to. Every day was different. I could never know, let alone guess, what Sherry would do in a given situation based upon what she did in the same situation previously. She never put her keys in the same place in our house day to day. Never. For someone who read Maimonides, the rationalist, she was anything but logical or rational with me. She felt life. She understood the spirit of life and the world. I fell in love with that in her. Me being the rationalist, the logical one. To all of you, of course, she was your teacher, the learned rabbi with knowledge to share and learn from. To me, she was my lover, my friend, my confidant, my partner, my critic. I'm happy I didn't give her this, by the way. It would have been all red marked and do this, redo that. But I got back at her sermons. I did. I was able to mark a little bit. I find it interesting that I am weeping and saddened by what her death has taken away from me. But I am happy and feel ecstatic with a wonderful glow on what she left me, what she gave to me. Now, what would a talk of Sherry be without a quote from Nachman of Breslov? Right? I was worried that one of you were going to refer to Nachman. I have no idea who Nachman is. But I did look him up for this. 2 quotes. Philosophies and intellectual wisdoms are not needed at all because too much sophistication can greatly damage a person. Second, it is a great mitzvah to be happy. And a quote from Sherry herself that Nachman would be jealous of. Don't worry, Bob. Don't plan so much. It'll all work out. And she did say that. From Sherry, I now appreciate Shabbat, where I take a rest from the secular and appreciate the divine. And although I will not have my divine anymore, I will still be remembering her and all she left me. And for those of you taking notes, she gave me fun and a relationship. Not just with her, but her whole family. Especially her children and our grandchildren. A little time out here. It's hard to read when you're, it's like raining on your glasses. I want to thank you all who sent well wishes and dinners over the past 3 years. They were more sustenance. They were more than just sustenance. They were physical manifestation of your love for Sherry, and she understood that. And of course, I want to thank the entire KI community, Steve, Chaim, Amy, for the love you gave Sherry during and after she was your rabbi. Sherry said to me very recently that she will leave this world looking at the mountain in our backyard. And Judith named it Shadow Mountain correctly. And as it opens to another dimension, she will go through it as a sparkle. A sparkle sounds like a form of energy to the engineer in me. And since there is a law of conservation of energy, Sherry will always live on in the energy force of our world as well as in our memories. Now think of her when you see any sparkle like the sun setting and reflecting on the ocean, on PCH. Well, I was going to close with something she wrote in her new book, Death is Always Personal, but that was already given. So I will not do that. I will pass it on now. Who's next? Mark, Judy.
First of all, thank you all for coming. It means so much. Second of all, bear with me. A little translation, the word in Dayenu in this context means that would be enough for us. If you had just been that mom who always smelled good, always had soft hands, a kind, encouraging word, and a smile, who encouraged our independence and dreams, Dayenu. If you had just been that mom who knew how to cook, filling the house with smells of home, sew teddy bears and quilts, bake chocolate cookies, read stories, and filled the holidays with love and memories, Dayenu. If you had just been that mom who let me stay home from school, even when we both knew I was just faking being sick but needed a day, never asking a question, but just being supportive, Dayenu. If you had just been that mom that dropped everything when you got a call from Israel to make it all the way to Ramat Gan by the time I got out of the hospital to help me with Or, my firstborn, guiding me through the basics during those first weeks when otherwise I would have been lost, Dayenu. If you had just rushed to the hospital in San Francisco to share those moments with Mark when each of Phoebe and Tilly came into the world, offering quiet support with love and your presence, Dayenu. If you had just been that mom who always listened to her children when they had questions about parenthood, always having the right advice, Dayenu. If you had just been that mom, that Nana, who filled her suitcase with more toys than clothes each time you came to visit your grandchildren in Israel, Dayenu. If you had just made the trip all the way to Israel to see us twice in the last 3 years, while all the while battling cancer, Dayenu. If you had just been that Nana who listened patiently to Or go on and on and on about Dungeons and Dragons, encouraging him to imagine and dream, even after an hour of him changing the rules when no one else would have had the patience, Dayenu. If you had just been that friend that was always honest, kind, and fun, never hesitating to fill a glass of wine or share a good dessert, Dayenu. If you had just been that spiritual leader who cared about teaching as much as you cared about learning, Dayenu. If you had just been that adventurer who never missed an opportunity to see and taste and smell a new part of the world, Dayenu. If you had just been that poet, that artist, that gardener, that lover of all things beautiful, Dayenu. If you had just faced death with grace, respect, and bravery, telling me in your last moments that you are not afraid and that your soul is leaving this world to begin a new journey, Dayenu.
I think I should have gone first. I only had a few minutes to jot down some things about my mom, and I hope it's good, and I hope I get through this. But I think, as all you know, there's so many things about her that it's really easy to think of something to say. But I did write it down, and I wrote it down because I wanted to have something as a guide for me this afternoon, because I hope I can get through this. And as I wrote that sentence down, that I needed a guide, I realized that my mom, the rabbi, has been a guide for me at many times in my life. She gave me constantly gave me good advice right up into the end. When I was single, she helped me decorate my apartment. And then when I was leaving my single lifestyle, she helped me in giving me advice how to buy an engagement ring for my wife, Sarah. I had no idea what I was doing. I had no idea how to buy a diamond, and we had many phone conversations. When we brought our first daughter, Phoebe, home from the hospital about 2 years ago, it was my mom who gave her her first bath, and as nervous parents, Sarah and I had no idea how to give a baby a bath without drowning the baby. And I remember one day that I was sitting with her, and we were watching Phoebe, and she was, telling me about Phoebe's development. And she looked at me and she said, I don't know how many people realize this, but her first career was as a kindergarten teacher, and she studied early child development. And she said, early child development. I was really born into that role. And this was before she became a rabbi. And it really made sense with all the advice that she's been giving me about my daughters. When our second daughter, Tilly, was born about 2.5 months ago, my mom was going to take off some time and spend some time with us as the ultimate au pair. And unfortunately, that didn't really work out. But, I'm very grateful that she got to meet my 2 daughters and spend time with us and get to know them a little bit. Well, that's about all I wrote down. I didn't think I was going to be able to get this far. I'll just leave you with, every day I think about my mom, and I think I'm fortunate here in that ever since I was young, everyone told me that I look like her, and I agree. So it's easy for me to remember her every day. Just whenever I look in the mirror, there she is, staring back at me.
"20 years ago, when some of us were studying to become rabbis, little knowing what we were doing or what that might mean, it took role models for us to trust that we could do this. And Sheryl was the director of outreach for the Reconstructionist movement when I was in seminary and trying to imagine myself as a rabbi. And Sheryl the building we were in, the seminary, was a mansion, so it was just a house where you couldn't help but literally run into everybody at some point or another, usually with a full cup of coffee going up the stairs. And I remember sitting in class and looking at Sheryl coming out of the office in her business suits with a kippah always to match her suit. And I thought, maybe I can do this. Maybe I too can someday be taken seriously as a rabbi. Because maybe the way I look and the gender I was born, the sex I was born, maybe it won't stop me from fulfilling my dreams and being taken seriously in that, because she was. She brought such dignity and intelligence and heart and integrity to what she did that she demanded, just by way of example, respect for the rabbinate, for the role of woman rabbi. And I stand on her shoulders. She was in the first cohort at the Institute for Jewish Spirituality, the first rabbinic cohort. I was in the second. Sherry, when she became Sheryl and had this amazing life, we would see her from afar at convention with Judith sitting together at convention, the lofty California women rabbis who had made it in the rabbinic world. And I admired them then and always. And so it was so incredibly moving to me that when she was thinking of retiring, Rabbi Sheryl Lewart told Rabbi Stephen Carr Rubin, there's a rabbi in Minnesota I want you to talk to. A rabbi in Minnesota I think might be a good fit for KI. And had she not approached me at convention, I never would have applied for this job. I never would have imagined myself worthy of the kind of role that she has played in this community. So it's literally because of Rabbi Sheryl Lewart's vision, not only for herself, but for what she was taking care of as her legacy, that I stand here. And so I will carry her legacy forward. She was able, with the love and generosity and support of so many of her students and colleagues, to finish her book that she was working on before she died. I've been teaching just recently a class after Cheryl's Torah study, which I continue Friday mornings. I've started a spirituality class, which now will be dedicated to Cheryl's teachings. And I will teach Cheryl's brachot with humility. I will try to bring to you what she loved about the practice of mindfulness meditation and the IJS way of learning. And we will do that as a community of learners in her memory and in her honor. It is the way we rabbis honor our teachers, is to teach in their memory. And we will say Kaddish for her for the year of study. The words of Rabbi Sheryl Lewart. We wear our losses. We enter the sacred space of memory of Yizkor Kaddish, wrapped in our losses. We are enfolded in coverings of connection. Many of us call to mind loved ones whose memories are a blessing. Some of us call to mind troubled memories and unfinished business. For some of us, the sharp fragments of unreconciled pain tear at the fabric of our hearts, uncover our bitterness. We long to move past feelings of anger and rage. We hope for shlemut, wholeness, and personal integrity. We open our hearts. We open our hearts to the healing presence of God, of holiness and goodness in the world. We remember death as an inevitable part of life, mourning those who died before their time, recalling those who died suffering and in pain. Kaddish invites us to remember the living, to invite healing for all who suffer, to wrap ourselves in garments of acceptance so that we can all move on.
It's a mess up here. And I had something so moving to say when I was walking up here. The truth is, I feel wholly inadequate today. I really wish there was some magic way of making it all go away, really, and having it not be true. That's the first thing I wish. But I know that's not going to happen. And then I sat here today in wonder and amazement at all of you, her family, standing up and being so eloquent and sharing your hearts and your tears with us. And I thought, only Cheryl could make that happen. She was a source of inspiration for so many of us in so many ways. And she said the same thing to a lot of us in different ways. The last thing she said to me also was, I want to go out as a sparkle. It's the last thing she said to me, I want to go out as a sparkle. And I assured her she was going to be everybody's sparkle. And that every time we'd look in each other's eyes, we'd see that little spark and we'd think about Cheryl. She'd be that little sparkle in everybody's eye, in everybody's heart. Music, prayers, blessings, poetry. She was eloquent and touched our hearts in so many ways. Yes, we will take contributions that people have been making and will be making to KI and make sure that her book is published and make sure that her legacy continues without question. Because those blessings are going to be like those proverbial pebbles tossed into the quiet pond. Every blessing is going to send ripples that just wash over untold thousands of people who will have never met Sheryl, but who will be brought to tears and laughter and joy and embrace sorrow with dignity and grace because of her words and her blessings, just as she's taught all of us in her life. So she will continue to teach all of us in spirit. Blessings for life's journey. Yeah. She was a gift. All of our gift. And we're all grateful. And so there aren't enough words to say. There aren't enough songs to sing. There aren't enough blessings to share. Every one of you, every one of us, this is now our job. Our job is to be her blessing. That's our job. Our job is to be the blessing that she would want us to be. And to embrace life the way she embraced it and would want us to embrace it. And then, as cliched as it is, it will fundamentally be true that every one of us will be like her shaliach, her representative in the world. And she will continue to live on through every one of the acts that we perform in her name and in her memory and in her love and in her wisdom and in her joy and in her passion and in her life. And so those who can, I invite you to rise. As Cantor Frankel does what he does so beautifully and so eloquently, in sharing words of blessing from our tradition. The El Mole Rachamim prayer.
קדושים וטהורים כזוהר הרקיע את נשמת הרב שיינדל טובה בת מלכה ואברהם משה שהלכה לעולמה בגן עדן תהי מנוחתה ענה בר הרחמים אז תראה בסתר כנפיך לעולמים וצרור בצרור החיים את נשמתה
These things I know, how the living go on living, and how the dead go on living with them. So that in a forest, even a dead tree casts a shadow, and the leaves fall one by one, and the branches break in the wind, and the bark peels off slowly, and the trunk cracks, and the rain seeps in through the cracks, and the trunk falls to the ground, and the moss covers it. And in the spring, the rabbits find it and build their nest inside the the dead tree, so that nothing is wasted in nature or in love. Nothing is wasted in nature or in love. On the back of our handout, first of all, on the front of our handout, is a radiant picture of Sheryl Sparkle. You can't see this picture and not smile. Is that a double negative? You have to smile when you see this picture. English as a second language. And on the back are the words of our Kaddish memorial prayer. And we know, because we all say it, Cheryl said it over and over again, we recite these words at memorials and funerals, and they say nothing of sadness or grief or loss or death. They say magnified and glorified and sanctified is that creative energy and power of life that we call God. Because in our tradition, even in these moments of our most profound griefs, we express gratitude. Because we know that the grief is only here because of the gift of the life. They are inextricably bound together. Sadness is balanced by the joy and the love that we celebrate by joining as a community and reciting these words of memory. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabba, bi'alma divrach chirutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayechon u'v'yomechon u'v'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael, ba'agala v'izman kari v'imru amen. Yehei shemei Rabba mavorach le'olam u'lalmei almaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei d'kudisha berichu, ve'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, da'amiran bi'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama Rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Seh shalom bimramav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'al kol yoshvei tevel v'imru amen. Adonai Natan, Adonai Lakach, Yishem Adonai Mevorah, God gives and takes away, and in between is the opportunity for a life of giving, a life of loving, and a life of blessing. Cheryl had asked for something. Can we do it? Yes. Cheryl had made a request. Not that she made many requests, but she made a request that we hear a Leonard Cohen song entitled Come Healing. And with any luck, we might just do that right now to conclude together. And while they're doing that, when it concludes, I am going to take Bob and her family, and we are going to go immediately right outside, and you're all welcome to follow us as we give you an opportunity to share your own greetings and well wishes with them, but not here in the sanctuary for the next 6 hours. Out there, but if we can have the music, that would be beautiful. And if not, I'll make Julie sing something again. It's on the iPad up there. It was. It's okay. This is something that Cheryl was always frustrated about too, so it's perfect for her. How come things don't always work, she used to say. Shouldn't we just be able to walk into the sanctuary and everything work? She used to yell at me about that all the time, like it was my responsibility somehow.
She has it on her phone.
It's playing, but we can't hear it.
Bring the iPad, we're all good. Here we go.
That was it? Julia's going to sing it. Do you know the song?
I will not sing it. Here we go. Hang on.
Just reload.
Here we go. Let's do this the right way. Here we go. Yeah. Actually have it.
Where's Steve Jobs?
Healing of the mind.
It's a short version. Please follow us all outside.